Welcome to this deep dive
Oh, yeah.
into the psychology of money.
Yeah.
Not the, boring
Yeah.
balance sheets and interest rates,
Right.
but the fascinating ways our brains work when it comes to money.
Yeah.
We're going to unpack excerpts you shared from Morgan Housel's The Psychology of Money.
Okay.
It's a book packed with compelling stories that reveal how our past experiences and emotions color our financial decisions.
It's easy to fall into the trap of thinking everyone views money rationally,
Right.
but that's far from reality.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Housel uses this great example about John F. Kennedy.
Okay.
When asked about the Great Depression,
Uh-huh.
Kennedy mentioned he learned about it in a classroom at Harvard.
Because his family was incredibly wealthy.
Right.
The Depression was an abstract concept to him,
Yeah.
not a lived experience.
Yeah.
This highlights how even monumental events can be interpreted drastically differently based on individual context.
It makes you wonder how much our own personal histories are shaping our current financial decisions, right?
Like, are we being overly cautious because of something we witnessed years ago?
Right.
Or maybe taking on too much risk because we haven't experienced a true downturn?
Housel digs into that further by comparing the stock market experiences of someone born in 1950 versus someone born in 1970.
Oh, okay.
For the younger person,
Yeah.
the market might feel like this amazing wealth-building machine.
But for someone who lived through the stagnant 1970s market,
Right.
their perspective would be completely different.
Exactly.
That'd likely be way more wary.
This really underscores Housel's point that our past experiences act like invisible fingerprints on every financial choice we make.
Yeah.
We may think we're being completely rational,
Right.
but these unconscious biases are often pulling the strings.
Okay, so that's a bit unsettling,
Yeah,
but also fascinating.
sure.
And it makes me think about the role of luck,
Okay.
which Housel tackles head on.
Yeah.
He challenges the assumption that success is all about skill
Uh-huh.
and failure is simply bad choices. Right. He argues that both luck and risk play a huge role,
Okay.
often more than we'd like to admit.
Yeah.
He uses this powerful example of Bill Gates and his childhood friend, Kent Evans.
Two incredibly talented students at the same school.
Yeah.
Gates becomes, well, Bill Gates.
Right.
Evans tragically dies in a climbing accident.
Uh,
It's almost impossible to read that and not think, what if?
that's exactly the point Housel's making.
Yeah.
We tend to focus on the survivors,
Right.
the Gates of the world,
Uh-huh.
and try to extract lessons from their success.
Right.
But what we're really seeing is survivorship bias.
Yeah.
We're missing all the stories of those who are equally talented, but simply didn't get lucky.
So what's the takeaway here? Should we
Yeah.
just throw up our hands and say it's all down to chance?
Not at all.
Okay.
But it's crucial to be aware of this bias,
Right.
especially when we're studying success stories.
Yeah.
And it makes us think about the flip side risk.
Okay.
Housel contrasts John E. Rockefeller and Enron, both of whom broke the law.
Right.
One becomes a legend, the other a cautionary tale.
So does that mean taking big risks is okay as long as you're lucky?
Again, it's not about endorsing recklessness,
Right.
but it highlights how the line between boldness and recklessness can be incredibly blurry,
Yeah.
and only hindsight reveals where it truly lies.
What I find fascinating here is how Housel uses these stories to challenge our assumptions about success and failure.
Sure.
It's not as simple as we often make it out to be, right?
Right.
There's this whole layer of luck and risk that we need to factor into the equation.
Absolutely.
It's a reminder to approach those narratives with a critical eye.
Yeah.
And it leads us to one of the most powerful forces in finance,
Okay.
often overlooked.
Yeah.
The power of time and compounding.
This is where Housel debunks the myth that the richest investor is always the best investor, right?
This is where he says that, right?
Precisely.
Yeah.
Take Warren Buffett.
Okay.
Widely considered the most successful investor ever.
Right.
But here's the
Oh.
kicker. Most of his wealth was accumulated after he turned 50.
Wait, really?
Yeah.
I always assumed it was all about him picking amazing stocks early on.
Picking great companies is part of it,
Yeah.
but the real magic is time.
Okay.
Buffett has been consistently investing for over 70 years.
Wow.
That's what allows compounding to truly work its magic.
So it's not just about the yearly returns,
Right,
but
yeah.
about consistent good returns over a ridiculously long period.
Housel drives this point home with a mind-blowing thought experiment.
Oh, okay.
What if Buffett had stopped investing in his 60s?
Oh, wow.
His net worth would be a staggering 99.9% lower.
Wow.
Almost unimaginable.
That really puts things in perspective. And I remember Housel also compares Buffett to Jim Simons,
Yes.
the hedge fund manager known for incredible returns.
Simons had significantly higher average annual returns than Buffett,
Wow.
but because he started later,
Right.
compounding hasn't had as much time to work its magic.
Yeah.
Even small differences in returns compounded over decades yield wildly different outcomes.
It's like that classic hockey stick graph of exponential growth,
Exactly.
but for money.
Yeah.
This makes me think about how we often underestimate the power of compounding.
Right.
Because it doesn't feel as exciting as, say, hitting it big on a single stock.
Sure.
We crave the instant gratification.
Exactly. And the impatience can lead us to make poor decisions,
Yeah.
chasing quick wins, instead of focusing on the slow, steady growth that compounding provides.
So how do we combat that impatience?
Well,
How do we rewire our brains to appreciate the power of the long game?
that's where Housel's idea of embracing reasonable over rational comes in.
I'm intrigued.
Okay.
What's the difference, especially
yeah.
when it comes to money?
We're often told to be perfectly rational with our finances. Analyze all the data, pick the mathematically optimal path.
Right.
But humans aren't robots.
Yeah.
We have emotions. And sometimes those emotions lead us to decisions that might not be optimal on paper,
Okay.
but feel right.
He uses a fascinating example of Julius Wagner Jauregg,
Okay.
the doctor who won a Nobel Prize for treating syphilis with induced fevers.
A risky approach.
Yeah.
Some would say irrational,
Right.
with some patients even dying.
Oh, wow.
But it was also incredibly effective for many.
So are you saying we should just go with our gut feeling all the time?
Not quite.
Okay.
There's a balance.
Okay.
Housel points to Harry Markowitz,
Okay.
the Nobel laureate, who developed complex models for risk-return optimization.
Right.
But guess what?
What?
For his own retirement, he chose a much simpler approach.
Because it made him feel better,
Exactly.
even if it wasn't perfectly optimal according to his own models.
It's a reminder that peace of mind is a valuable return in itself.
Yeah.
And often that peace of mind comes from choosing what feels reasonable,
Right.
even if it's not perfectly rational on paper.
This also plays into saving money, which Housel argues isn't simply about having leftovers at the end of the month.
Okay.
Okay. I'm all ears.
Yeah.
What else is there to saving?
It's about consciously choosing to have less now so you can have more later.
Yeah.
This can be a tough mental hurdle for many,
Right.
but the rewards can be significant.
He uses this brilliant analogy of the 1970s energy crisis.
Oh, yeah.
Overcoming, it wasn't just about finding more energy. It was
yeah.
about becoming more efficient with the energy we already had.
He connects this to personal finance.
Right.
We often think saving is about earning more,
Right.
but it can also be about needing less.
And needing less is often tied to our ego, right?
Okay,
Like that saying,
Yeah.
we buy things we don't need with money we don't have to impress people we don't like.
Housel suggests that a lot of spending beyond basic comfort is driven by our ego,
Yeah.
trying to keep up with our income.
Right.
It's about managing that ego and finding contentment with what we have.
Housel puts it beautifully. Past a certain level of income, what you need is just what sits below your ego.
Yeah.
That's a powerful reminder that wealth isn't about possessions. It's about freedom from needing more.
And that freedom leads us to the unseen returns of wealth.
Okay.
Control over your time and choices.
Yeah.
These often go unnoticed,
Yeah.
but can be more fulfilling than any material possession.
He talks about rejecting a high-paying job because the demands on his time were too high.
Right.
It's about recognizing the trade-off between wealth and time. And sometimes time is the more valuable asset.
This connects to a sobering fact.
Okay.
Americans today aren't significantly happier than in the 1950s,
Really?
despite being wealthier.
We've used that wealth to buy bigger things, but at the cost of our time and autonomy. So it's like we're trading our most precious resource, time,
Yeah.
for things that ultimately don't bring lasting happiness.
This all makes me wonder about the stories we tell ourselves about money,
Right.
especially when we try to predict the future.
Okay, let's unpack that.
Sure.
What are some of the dangers we should watch out for?
Housel highlights our tendency to construct complete narratives despite having incomplete information.
Okay.
We try to connect dots that aren't there, guided by our biases and assumptions.
Right.
This can lead to overconfidence in our predictions,
Yeah.
especially in something as complex as the economy.
He uses this great example of comparing the economy in 2007 and 2009.
Okay.
If an alien visited Earth in those years, they'd see the same tangible assets,
Yeah.
buildings, infrastructure resources.
But the narrative had completely flipped.
Right.
In 2007, it was all about stability and growth.
Right.
By 2009, it was crisis and collapse.
Yeah.
That shift in narrative,
Yeah.
despite the underlying reality remaining largely unchanged,
Yeah.
fueled a massive recession.
So the stories we tell ourselves about the economy, even if they're not accurate, can have a huge impact on our decisions and behaviors.
Exactly.
And it highlights the difficulty of predicting the future.
Right.
Housel points out how we tend to overestimate the likelihood of events we either desperately want or fear. Think back to the belief that World War I would be the war to end all wars.
Tragically optimistic and ultimately untrue.
Right.
It shows how our desires and fears can cloud our judgment,
Yeah.
making us see the world as we wish it to be,
Right.
not as it actually is.
This brings us to a crucial concept for navigating the world of money,
Okay.
the importance of room for error.
Okay. What does that look like in practice?
Think of blackjack card counters.
Okay.
They have a system that tilts the odds in their favor,
Right.
but they never bet everything on a single hand. They acknowledge the possibility of being wrong,
Right.
even when the odds seem good.
That makes sense.
So it's about having a buffer,
Yeah.
a cushion to absorb the inevitable setbacks and surprises.
Precisely.
He quotes a successful card counter who says that even though card counting is statistically proven,
Right.
it doesn't guarantee you'll win every hand, let alone every trip to the casino.
Right.
It's a great reminder that even the best systems don't guarantee success 100% of the time.
Yeah.
So how do we apply this concept of room for error to our own finances?
It's about acknowledging uncertainty and planning for unexpected setbacks.
Okay.
It's about increasing the gap between what you think will happen and what could happen.
Can you give me a real-world example of this?
Think about Bill Gates' strategy at Microsoft.
Okay.
He always kept enough cash on hand to cover a year's worth of payroll,
Wow.
even if revenue completely dried up.
That's a bold move,
It is.
especially for a company known for its growth.
It highlights the importance of having that cushion,
Right.
that breathing room
Yeah.
to weather unexpected storms.
And that breathing room isn't just financial.
Right.
Housel talks about how even a 30% decline in the market,
Yeah.
which is fairly common historically,
Well.
can have a huge psychological impact.
Right.
It can lead to self-doubt,
Sure.
fear,
Yeah.
and ultimately exhaustion.
That exhaustion can make us want to quit at the worst possible time,
Right.
right when opportunity might be highest.
This circles back to embracing reasonable over rational.
Exactly.
Sometimes the most rational choice on paper isn't sustainable emotionally.
Right.
And if we're not mentally prepared, it can sabotage our long-term goals.
It's a crucial insight.
It's not just about the numbers.
Yeah.
It's about our psychology, our capacity to handle the ups and downs.
And speaking of ups and downs,
Yeah.
Housel offers a fascinating perspective on how we view volatility.
Volatility, the word itself makes me anxious.
I know, right?
I always thought it was something to be avoided at all costs.
Housel challenges that view.
Really?
He argues that we should see volatility as a fee, not a fine.
Okay.
He uses the analogy of a Disneyland ticket.
Okay. I'm listening.
You pay $100,
Uh-huh.
but you get an amazing experience in return.
Right.
You wouldn't view that $100 as a punishment, right?
Right. It's the price of admission for the experience.
Exactly. And he applies the same logic to investing.
Okay.
Volatility is often seen as something negative,
Right.
but it's actually the price of admission for earning higher returns in the long run.
So instead of fearing volatility, we should accept it as part of the game.
Precisely.
This completely reframes how I think about market fluctuations.
Yeah.
It's not about avoiding them.
Right.
It's about understanding why they exist and accepting them as part of the process.
And this leads us to another important point Housel makes.
Okay.
Different investors play different games.
What does that mean exactly?
It challenges the idea that assets have one rational price.
Okay.
In reality, investors have different goals,
Huh.
time horizons,
Okay.
and risk tolerances.
Yeah.
What might seem like a crazy price to one person could be perfectly reasonable to another.
It's like the question of how much should you pay for a house?
Exactly.
There's no single right answer.
Right.
It depends on your individual needs and circumstances.
Housel uses the dot-com bubble as an example. Some might say the valuations in 1999 were irrational exuberance. But what if those investors weren't playing the long game?
What if they were just trying to ride the momentum and get out before the bubble burst?
Exactly.
So there's no judgment on their approach as long as they were aware of the game they were playing.
Exactly. And the danger is when long-term investors get caught up in the short-term frenzy,
Right.
abandoning their own game plan and making decisions based on someone else's rules.
So it's about being aware of the different games being played
Yeah.
and making sure you're sticking to your own strategy.
Precisely. And sometimes that strategy might involve embracing an outlook that's often frowned upon.
Okay. No,
Pessimism.
wait, pessimism?
Yeah.
I thought positivity was always the key.
Housel challenges that notion.
Okay.
He argues that a healthy dose of pessimism can actually make you a better investor.
That's surprising. Tell me more.
Think about it.
Okay.
Pessimism tends to grab our attention more than optimism.
Uh-huh.
If someone tells you everything is going to be great, you're likely to tune them out.
That's true. We tend to pay more attention to negative news.
And that heightened attention can make us more cautious.
Okay.
And more likely to question assumptions.
Right.
It's like having a built-in risk management system.
So pessimism can help us see the world more realistically, acknowledging both the good and bad potential outcomes.
Right.
It's about being prepared for the worst while still hoping for the best.
Exactly. And Housel points out that pessimists often extrapolate present trends without considering how markets adapt.
Can you give me an example of this?
Think about the peak oil theory in 2008.
Okay.
Oil prices were surging, and many believed we were running out of oil.
Right.
One prominent analyst even predicted global oil production would peak that year and then decline.
That sounds scary.
It was a common narrative,
Yeah.
but it failed to account for human ingenuity.
Right.
The higher oil prices spurred innovation, like the development of fracking technology, which opened up vast new reserves.
So they underestimated our capacity to adapt and innovate.
Exactly.
They focused on the problem without considering potential solutions.
It's a reminder that the future rarely unfolds as a straight line from the present.
Right.
And that we humans are remarkably good at finding solutions when we need them.
This makes me think about how our perception of the world can be influenced by our own biases and the stories we tell ourselves.
That's a perfect segue to one of the most powerful and often overlooked forces shaping our financial decisions.
Okay.
Narratives.
Okay, break it down for me.
Sure.
Why are narratives so powerful, especially when it comes to money?
Our brains are wired to crave stories, to create narratives that help us understand the world around us.
Right.
It's how we make sense of chaos, find meaning in events, and try to predict the future.
And those narratives can be incredibly persuasive.
Yeah.
Especially when they tap into our hopes and fears.
Think about the 2008 financial crisis. In the lead-up, the narrative was about stability, growth, and the infallibility of the markets.
Right.
Then, boom, the housing bubble bursts.
Right.
And that narrative shatters.
Yeah.
Replaced by fear and panic.
It's like that image Housel uses of an alien visiting Earth in 2007 and then again in 2009.
Yeah.
The tangible assets haven't changed much, but the economic story has completely flipped.
And that news story, even if not entirely accurate, becomes the driving force behind people's decisions, leading to dramatic shifts in behavior.
It's a reminder that our perception of reality is often more influenced by the stories we tell ourselves than by objective facts.
Yeah.
That's a bit unsettling, isn't it?
It is.
So how do we become more aware of these narratives and make sure they're not leading us astray?
Housel points out two specific dangers when it comes to financial narratives.
Okay.
First, the more we want something to be true, the more likely we are to believe a story that overestimates the odds of it actually being true.
It's like the saying, hope springs eternal.
Right.
We all want to believe that good things will happen, especially when it comes to our money.
And that desire can make us vulnerable to stories that promise unrealistic outcomes or downplay risks.
He uses the poignant example of a woman in the documentary, How to Live Forever, who vividly remembers Armistice Day in 1918 as the happiest day of her life.
Because she believed it meant the end of all wars.
Exactly. A tragically optimistic narrative that turned out to be false.
It highlights how our emotional desires can distort our perception of reality, leading us to believe things we want to be true, even when the evidence suggests otherwise.
So it's about being aware of that bias and being willing to question our own assumptions, especially when they're based on what we hope will happen, rather than what's likely to happen.
Exactly. And the second danger is that we all have an incomplete view of the world, but we form complete narratives to fill in the gaps.
And those made-up pieces are based on our limited experiences and biases, which can lead to a distorted view of reality.
Even something as seemingly objective as history is subject to this.
Oh, wow.
Housel quotes military historian B.H. Liddell Hart, who wrote that history cannot be interpreted without the aid of imagination and intuition. Because of the sheer quantity of evidence. Selection is inevitable,
Right.
which means bias creeps in.
That's a sobering thought.
It is.
Even when looking at past events, our understanding is shaped by the stories we choose to tell,
Right.
often influenced by our own beliefs and biases.
This can distort not just our view of the past,
Yeah.
but also the present and future.
So recognizing that our understanding is always incomplete, always filtered through our own lens, is crucial for making sound decisions.
Yeah.
Especially with money.
To illustrate the dangers of assuming we know more than we do, Housel shares the story of Clarence Madoff and the dentist.
Oh, okay. Remind me about that one.
In 1931, Madoff went to have some teeth pulled.
Okay.
The dentist discovered abscessed teeth, and without consulting Madoff or getting consent, decided to remove those too.
That doesn't sound good.
Tragically, Madoff died a week later from complications.
Oh, wow.
His wife sued.
Yeah.
Not because the surgery went wrong,
Right.
but because he never consented to those additional extractions.
That's a powerful story.
It is.
Even if it's a bit unsettling.
Yeah.
What's the connection to personal finance?
It highlights how a lack of understanding and a desire for control can lead to disastrous consequences.
Okay.
We may think we know more than we do,
Right.
especially in complex areas like finance.
Right.
Sometimes the best course of action is to defer to experts,
Yeah.
to acknowledge our limitations.
But it's also about understanding that even experts can be wrong, and that we have a right to be informed and involved in decisions that affect our lives.
Absolutely.
It's about finding that balance between trust and autonomy.
And this story connects to the evolution of medicine.
Okay.
For a long time, doctors believed they knew best,
Uh-huh.
and patients should blindly trust their judgment.
That seems a bit paternalistic, doesn't it?
Well, that does,
Yeah.
but it was based on this idea of a universal right way to cure everything.
Right.
However, as medicine advanced,
Yeah.
the approach shifted.
Okay.
Doctors realized patients have different values, goals, and risk tolerances.
So it became more about shared decision-making.
Exactly.
Recognizing that there's rarely a one-size-fits-all solution.
Housel argues this shift is a valuable lesson for how we approach finances.
Okay.
There's no single right way to manage money.
Yeah.
No universal formula for success.
It's about understanding your own circumstances,
Right.
goals,
Yeah.
risk tolerance and values, and then finding an approach that aligns with those things.
Yeah.
Exactly.
It's about taking ownership of your financial decisions and finding a path that feels right for you,
Right.
even if it doesn't perfectly follow the textbook.
And that feeling of ownership and agency can be as important as the financial outcome itself.
Right.
It's about feeling confident and comfortable with the choices you're making.
That's a great place to pause for now.
Okay.
We've covered a lot of ground,
Yeah.
from the power of individual experiences to the perils of narratives and the importance of room for error.
Sure.
We've also touched on some key concepts like embracing reasonable over rational and how our past can shape our present financial decisions. But there's so much more to explore.
Okay.
We'll continue our deep dive into the psychology of money next time.
Sounds good. Picking up where we left off, I think it's fascinating how Housel weaves in his own personal experiences with money.
Yeah.
He shares how his family's financial philosophy was shaped by his parents' contrasting financial journey.
Yes, it really brings those abstract concepts down to earth and shows how they play out in real life. Right. He talks about how his parents went from extreme poverty when his dad was in medical school to relative affluence once he became a doctor.
And despite achieving financial success,
Right.
they maintained a remarkably frugal lifestyle.
Yeah.
Clearly, those early experiences of scarcity left a lasting impression.
It's like their internal money script was written during those lean years.
Yeah.
And even when their circumstances changed, those ingrained habits and attitudes towards money persisted.
Absolutely. It speaks to the profound impact our past can have on our present financial decisions.
Right.
Often in ways we don't even realize.
Yeah.
And then you see how Housel lends his parents' frugality with his own desire for independence and control over his time,
Right.
creating his own unique approach to money.
He talks about prioritizing peace of mind over maximizing returns.
Yeah.
This translates into choices like owning their home outright, even though it might not be the most financially optimal move. That feeling of security and freedom from not having a mortgage clearly outweighs any potential gains they might get from leveraging their assets.
Right.
It's a great example of how emotional returns can be just as important as financial returns.
It reminds me of that concept we discussed earlier,
Yeah.
reasonable over rational.
Exactly.
They're making choices that align with their values and priorities,
Yeah.
even if they don't always make sense on a spreadsheet.
And it's reflected in their investment strategy, too.
Right.
They've chosen a simple, long-term approach,
Okay.
primarily investing in index funds and holding those investments for the long haul.
It's all about consistency and discipline.
Right.
Letting compounding work its magic over time.
Exactly.
No trying to time the market or chase the latest hot stock tip.
Their approach seems to boil down to independent security and a peace of mind.
Yeah.
It's a great example of how aligning your investment strategy with your broader life goals and values can lead to more fulfilling outcomes.
It's not just about the numbers. It's about using money as a tool to build the kind of life you want.
Right.
And that brings us back to one of the core themes of the book,
Okay.
understanding your own psychology when it comes to money.
We keep coming back to this because it's so crucial.
Right.
It's easy to get caught up in the technical aspects of finance,
Yeah.
the investment strategies, the market trends, but ultimately it's our psychology that drives our decisions.
Housel emphasizes that money isn't just about numbers and spreadsheets.
Right.
It's about emotions, biases, and those often hidden forces that shape our choices.
And those forces are different for everyone.
Yeah.
Our experiences, upbringing, personalities, they all contribute to how we think about and handle money.
So becoming aware of those forces and understanding our own financial psychology is crucial, right?
Absolutely. It's about recognizing our own biases.
Right.
Those blind spots that might lead us to make decisions that aren't truly in our best interest.
Once we understand our own psychology, we can start making more conscious and deliberate choices about how we manage money.
Yeah.
It's about taking control instead of letting our emotions control us.
It's about using money as a tool to create the life we want,
Right.
not letting it become a source of stress or anxiety.
That's a powerful message.
It is.
And to help us apply these insights,
Yeah.
Housel lays out a framework for thinking about the psychology of money.
Okay.
He calls them confessions, these bite-sized pieces of wisdom that capture the essence of his financial philosophy.
They're not about specific investment strategies or products.
Okay.
They're about mindset, about approaching money in a way that leads to happiness and fulfillment.
And what I love is how relatable and applicable they are to anyone,
Right.
regardless of their financial situation.
Let's dive into some of these confessions.
Okay.
I'm curious to hear what resonated with you.
One that always stands out to me is no one's crazy.
Oh, yeah, that's a good one.
It seems simple, but it's profound.
Yeah.
Everyone approaches money differently based on their experiences and values.
It's a reminder that there's no single right way to manage money.
Right.
What might seem irrational to one person could make perfect sense to someone else,
Yeah.
given their background and circumstances.
It's about having empathy and understanding for people who make different financial choices.
Right.
We're all just trying to figure it out, navigating this complex world of money.
Another confession that really struck a chord with me is, doing well with money has a little to do with how smart you are, and a lot to do with how you behave.
Yes, this goes back to what we were saying earlier about psychology being more important than intellect
Exactly.
when it comes to financial success.
Even the most brilliant financial minds can make terrible money decisions
Right.
if they don't have the right mindset and habits.
It's about self-awareness, discipline, and the ability to control impulses,
Right.
especially when it comes to something as emotionally charged as money.
And that leads us to another powerful confession. The biggest financial risk is not what happens to your money, but what happens to your mind.
This is so true. Our emotions can easily lead us astray,
Yeah.
causing us to make impulsive choices that we later regret.
Fear, greed, panic.
Right.
These can all cloud our judgment and derail our financial plans.
So it's about recognizing those emotional triggers and having strategies to manage them.
Yeah.
Having that written financial plan, diversifying our portfolio.
Right.
Those aren't just technical strategies, they're psychological tools to help us stay grounded.
Exactly. And here's another confession that gets to the heart of risk.
Okay.
You should like risk because it pays off over time, but you should be paranoid of ruinous risk because it prevents you from taking future risks that will pay off over time.
That's a really interesting distinction.
It is.
So it's not about avoiding risk altogether,
Yeah.
but about understanding the different types of risk.
Precisely, taking calculated risks is essential for growth and progress,
Right.
but taking on too much risk can wipe you out. preventing you from taking future risks that might lead to success.
It's about finding that sweet spot, that balance between playing it safe and pushing yourself just enough to achieve your goals.
Right.
And recognizing that the biggest risk isn't necessarily the potential for loss,
Yeah.
but the potential for ruin.
Exactly. And this ties into another confession.
Okay.
Define the game you're playing.
Oh.
And make sure you're not influenced by people playing a different game.
This reminds me of those day traders constantly chasing the next big stock. That's a completely different game than someone who's investing for retirement decades down the road.
It's about staying focused on your own game plan.
Yeah.
Not comparing yourself to others who might have completely different goals and risk tolerances.
And then there's that gem of a confession.
Okay.
Respect the mess.
Oh, yeah, that's a good one.
Acknowledging that money is messy.
Yeah.
Life is messy, and there's no point in striving for perfection.
It's so liberating.
Right.
It's about embracing the ups and downs,
Yeah.
the unexpected twists and turns, and recognizing that things don't always go according to plan.
Right.
And that's okay.
It's about giving ourselves permission to be imperfect,
Yeah.
to make mistakes,
Well,
to
yeah.
learn from those mistakes.
And to find joy in the journey,
Yeah.
even when it's messy.
This next confession speaks to the power of diverse perspectives.
Okay.
Smart, informed, and reasonable people can disagree,
Yeah.
in large part because they have unusually different experiences.
We can't underestimate the influence of our unique journeys, can we?
Right. They shape how we interpret information and arrive at conclusions.
Yeah.
Two people can look at the same data and come to completely different conclusions.
It's a reminder to be open to different viewpoints
Right.
and recognize that there's rarely a single right answer.
Yeah.
There's value in hearing from those who have walked different paths, who have different perspectives.
And those differences can lead to more creative and innovative solutions.
Exactly.
It's about embracing the richness of diverse experiences.
This next confession is particularly powerful,
Okay.
especially in today's world.
Yeah.
Less ego, more wealth.
Okay.
It speaks to the connection between our financial well-being
Uh-huh.
and our sense of self-worth,
Right.
our desire for status and recognition.
It's easy to fall into the trap of trying to impress others with our spending,
Yeah.
trying to keep up with the Joneses.
Howells reminds us that true wealth isn't about flashy possessions,
Right.
but about financial freedom and security.
Yeah.
It's about what you don't see,
Right.
the peace of mind,
Yeah.
the options,
Right.
the ability to live life on your own terms.
That freedom comes from saving and investing wisely,
Right.
not from keeping up with the latest trends or impressing people we might not even like.
And then there's this very practical yet profound confession.
Okay.
Manage your money in a way that helps you sleep at night.
This is about prioritizing peace of mind over maximizing returns at all costs, right?
It's exactly finding an approach that allows you to sleep soundly, knowing you're on a path that aligns with your values and goals.
Financial stress can seep into every aspect of our lives.
Right.
Finding ways to minimize that stress is crucial for our overall well-being.
Now, this next confession might seem counterintuitive.
Okay.
You should save money without a specific goal in mind.
We're always told to save for something specific.
Right.
Retirement, a down payment on a house, a vacation.
But Housel argues that life is full of surprises.
Okay.
Having a cushion of savings allows you to handle those unexpected twists and turns
Yeah.
without derailing your overall financial plan.
It's about acknowledging the unpredictability of life and having that financial buffer to weather the storms and seize unexpected opportunities.
This next confession is a powerful reminder.
Okay.
Especially in today's fast-paced, achievement-oriented culture, the most important thing is to survive.
That might sound a bit dramatic,
It does.
but I think he's getting at something really important.
Yeah.
Resilience.
So right.
The ability to weather the inevitable setbacks and come out stronger on the other side.
Exactly. Long-term success isn't about avoiding mistakes altogether,
Right.
but about being able to bounce back from them to learn and adapt.
It's about recognizing that failure is part of the journey,
Yeah.
and our ability to cope with it often determines our ultimate success.
Now, this confession speaks to the balance between planning and adaptability.
Okay.
You should plan for a very long time horizon, but be prepared to change your plan along the way.
Our goals and priorities evolve over time.
Yeah.
A financial plan that made sense 5 years ago might need adjustments
Right.
as our circumstances change.
It's about recognizing that life is a journey, not a destination.
Right.
And we need to be flexible and adapt as we go.
And that brings us to what might be my favorite confession of all.
Okay.
The highest form of wealth is the ability to wake up every morning and say, I can do whatever I want today.
It's a definition of wealth that transcends just money, encompassing freedom, autonomy, and the ability to live life on your own terms.
It's a reminder that money is simply a means to an end.
Yeah.
A tool to help us create a fulfilling and meaningful life.
And that freedom, that ability to choose how we spend our time and energy is priceless.
House there then takes us on a fascinating journey through the history of the American consumer.
Okay.
Shedding light on how we got to where we are today.
It's like a time machine, transporting us back to the post-World War II era.
Right.
And showing us how the economic landscape, consumer behavior, and even our cultural attitudes towards money have transformed over the decades.
He starts in 1945, with millions of soldiers returning home, and the nation grappling with the transition from a wartime to a peacetime economy.
It was a time of both optimism and uncertainty.
Right.
The economy was booming, but there were fears of another crash, like the Great Depression.
And in this uncertain landscape, the big question was, what will all these returning soldiers do?
Yeah, they needed jobs, housing, a sense of purpose in this new world.
The answers to those questions ended up shaping the American consumer for generations to come.
The government stepped in with policies like low interest rates and the GI Bill, making it easier for veterans to buy homes, start businesses, and pursue education.
Combined with the pent-up demand for consumer goods that were scarce during the war, it led to an economic boom and a surge in consumer spending. It was the birth of the American consumer as we know it today.
People were buying cars, appliances, homes, everything.
Right. It was a time of prosperity, and a new middle class was emerging.
Housel points out that the defining characteristic of the 1950s economy was that the country got rich by making the poor less poor.
Oh, interesting.
Wages were rising. The gap between rich and poor was shrinking. And there was a sense of shared prosperity.
It felt like the American dream was within reach for everyone. But as we know, that era didn't last.
Housel guides us through the turbulent decades that followed. The economic shocks of the 1970s, the rise of globalization, and the tech boom of the 1990s.
And through it all, we see this theme of shifting economic sands, leading to growing inequality, stagnant wages for many, and a growing sense of anxiety about the future.
The rising costs of housing, healthcare, and education, coupled with slow wage growth, have created financial strain for many families.
And the strain has been exacerbated by the easy availability of credit. Making it easier to fall into debt just to maintain a certain lifestyle.
It paints a sobering picture of how the American dream has become more elusive for many. Even as the overall economy has grown.
But amidst the challenges, Housel also highlights the resilience and adaptability of the American consumer.
People have found ways to cope. Working longer hours, taking on side gigs, adjusting their expectations.
It's a reminder that our financial destinies aren't predetermined. We have the power to shape our futures, even in a challenging economic environment.
Absolutely. And to wrap up this historical exploration, Housel brings us to the present day. Highlighting the trends shaping the financial landscape for future generations.
He talks about automation, the gig economy, and the growing role of technology.
It feels like we're living through a period of rapid transformation. With new opportunities and challenges emerging all the time.
He explores how these trends are impacting those entering the workforce today, how the very nature of work is changing, and the need for continuous learning and adaptability.
He also talks about the need for new models of social safety nets to support those struggling to keep up in this rapidly changing world.
It's a fascinating and complex landscape with no easy answers.
It's clear the old assumptions about work careers and financial security no longer hold true. We need new ways of thinking and approaching money if we want to thrive in the 21st century.
And speaking of thriving, let's talk about saving money. This is where Housel really challenges some deeply ingrained beliefs and offers some fresh perspectives.
He begins by distinguishing between saving and investing. Saving is about putting money aside for short-term needs and goals, while investing is about putting money to work for long-term growth.
Both are important, but they serve different purposes.
Exactly.
And he challenges the idea that saving is all about deprivation and sacrifice.
Instead, he frames it as a path to freedom and control. Having savings allows you to take risks, pursue passions, and say no to things that don't align with your values.
It's not about denying yourself.
Right.
It's about empowering yourself to choose what you want.
Yeah.
And that choice, that autonomy can be incredibly liberating.
When it comes to the psychology of saving,
Yeah.
House One highlights the importance of having a specific goal in mind.
Okay.
It could be a down payment on a house, a dream vacation, or early retirement.
Having a clear purpose for your savings can make it easier to stay motivated and on track.
Yeah.
It's about having something concrete to visualize and work towards.
He also talks about the power of automation.
Oh.
Setting up automatic transfers to your savings account each month
Right.
takes the decision-making
Yeah.
and the potential for procrastination
Right.
out of the equation.
It's about making saving a habit a regular part of your financial routine.
Exactly.
And reminding yourself that even small, consistent savings add up over time.
One of the most insightful points Housel makes is that saving isn't just about the money itself.
Okay.
It's about the mindset it cultivates.
It can change how you view money,
Yeah.
making you more mindful of your spending and appreciative of what you already have.
It's about recognizing that money is a finite resource and every spending decision is a trade-off.
Right.
And finding contentment and satisfaction in the things that truly matter,
Yeah.
rather than chasing fleeting material possessions.
So saving is about building a foundation,
Yeah.
both financially and mentally.
Once that foundation is in place, we can start thinking about investing.
Okay, that's where things can get really interesting.
Right.
And potentially overwhelming.
Housel acknowledges that investing can be intimidating,
Yeah.
especially for beginners.
All that jargon, the sheer number of options,
Right.
and the uncertainty about the future.
It's easy to feel lost and unsure of where to even begin.
But Housel emphasizes that investing doesn't have to be complicated.
Right.
He advocates for a simple, low-cost approach,
Yeah.
focusing on diversified index funds and holding on to those investments for the long haul.
It's a strategy designed to minimize fees, reduce risk, and maximize the power of compounding.
Right?
And it's accessible to everyone,
Yeah.
regardless of their financial expertise or income.
One of the biggest psychological challenges for investors is the fear of loss.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
It's completely natural to feel anxious about losing money, especially when the market is volatile and the news is filled with negativity.
Those headlines can really play with our emotions.
Absolutely.
But Housel reminds us that short-term fluctuations are normal
Right.
to be expected.
The key to long-term success is to stay focused on your goals.
Yeah.
Stick to your plan and not let fear dictate your decisions.
This is where having a written investment plan can be incredibly helpful.
Right. It's like having a roadmap to guide you through the ups and downs,
Yeah.
reminding you of your long-term objectives.
And that brings us back to the importance of patience.
Right.
Investing is a long game,
Uh-huh.
and it takes time for compounding to work its magic.
Resist that urge to chase quick returns.
Yeah.
Or try to time the market.
Stay focused on the long-term horizon and let the power of compounding work its magic.
Housel also warns against the danger of overconfidence.
Yeah, when the market is doing well,
Right.
it's easy to get caught up in the hype and start thinking we're investment geniuses.
We've all been there, a few winning trades, and suddenly we feel invincible.
But success can breed overconfidence,
Yeah.
leading to reckless decisions.
It's about staying humble, remembering that luck plays a role,
Yeah.
and not letting a few wins inflate our ego.
And it's about recognizing that everyone is playing their own game,
Right.
with different goals and starting points.
Yeah.
Comparing our returns to others is a recipe for frustration.
Focus on your own progress, not on keeping up with the Joneses or chasing some arbitrary benchmark.
Right.
The most important measure of success is how well you're progressing toward your own goals.
And that brings us to one of the most crucial skills for any investor,
Okay.
controlling your emotions.
Fear, greed, panic.
Exactly.
These can drive impulsive decisions that can derail our long-term plans.
Housel offers some great tips for managing those emotions.
Okay.
Having a written investment plan, diversifying your portfolio,
Right.
and avoiding checking your investments too frequently.
It's about recognizing that the markets are designed to test our emotions.
Yeah.
The most successful investors are those who can stay calm and rational when everyone else is losing their cool.
And it all comes back to having a long-term perspective.
Right.
Remember, the market goes through cycles. Short-term fluctuations are inevitable.
Don't get distracted by the noise. Focus on the bigger picture.
And remember, as Housel so eloquently puts it,
Yeah.
the stock market is not a video game.
Right.
It's a way to transfer wealth from the impatient to the patient.
Investing is not about getting rich quick.
Exactly.
It's about disciplined patience, And the willingness to stay invested for the long haul.
It's about recognizing that markets aren't always rational or predictable.
Right.
Having a sound strategy,
Yeah.
managing your emotions, and being willing to ride out the inevitable ups and downs are essential for long-term success.
And recognizing your own limitations is crucial.
Yeah.
Don't be afraid to seek professional advice when needed.
Right. It's about knowing what you don't know.
Right.
And being willing to delegate to experts.
Ultimately, the goal is to create a life that's fulfilling and aligned with your values.
Yes.
And that brings us to the often complex relationship between money and happiness.
Housel challenges our assumptions about what it means to be wealthy and happy.
Okay.
He starts by saying there's a big difference between being rich and being wealthy. Being rich is about having a high income, while being wealthy is about having financial freedom and control over your time.
He argues that wealth is often more fulfilling than riches.
Right.
Because it gives you the power to choose how you spend your time and energy.
It's about having the freedom to pursue your passions, spend time with loved ones,
Right.
and make a positive impact on the world without being weighed down by financial worries.
He defines wealth as having the resources to live a life that aligns with your values and priorities.
Right.
And that might look different for everyone.
Yeah.
For some, it might be about spending more time with family. For others, it might be about pursuing a passion project or traveling the world.
It's about recognizing that the purpose of money is to support the life you want to live,
Right.
not to become an end in itself.
And he makes an interesting distinction between saving and building wealth.
Yeah.
Saving is about putting money aside.
Right.
Building wealth is about using that money to create a life that feels rich and fulfilling.
He uses a powerful analogy.
Okay.
Building wealth is like planting a tree.
Okay.
You nurture it, give it time to grow, and eventually it provides shade and shelter, enhancing your life in ways that go far beyond the initial effort of planting it.
That's a great way to think about it.
Yeah.
It shifts the focus from simply accumulating money to using it to create something lasting and meaningful.
And it highlights the importance of patience,
Right.
allowing things to unfold over time,
Yeah.
and understanding that true wealth is about more than just a number on a balance sheet.
And speaking of patience, also reminds us that building wealth often requires delayed gratification,
Yeah.
choosing to invest today for a better tomorrow.
This can be a challenge in our instant gratification culture,
It is.
but it's a key principle for long-term success.
He uses a compelling example of the marshmallow experiment,
Oh, yeah.
where children who were able to delay gratification by resisting a marshmallow in the present
Right.
were more likely to achieve positive outcomes later in life.
It's a reminder that our ability to control our impulses and make choices that benefit our future selves is crucial,
Yeah.
not just financially, but in all aspects of life.
It's about understanding our own risk tolerance and finding a level of risk that allows us to pursue our goals without keeping us up at night.
And sometimes that means acknowledging that we don't have all the answers,
Right.
that seeking professional advice can be a smart move.
Especially in complex areas like investing, it's about knowing when to delegate to those with more expertise.
Exactly. The goal is to find a path that aligns with your personal circumstances and goals,
Right.
a path that feels right for you.
So much of this boils down to the individual, right?
Yeah.
There's no one-size-fits-all approach to finances.
That's a key takeaway from the psychology of money. We each have our own unique relationship with money,
Right.
shaped by a complex interplay of emotions, experiences, and values.
And that brings us back to one of the most fundamental questions: the relationship between money and happiness.
We often assume more money automatically equals more happiness. But Housel challenges that notion.
He argues that true wealth isn't about the number in your bank account,
Right.
but about the freedom and choices that money can provide.
It's about having the ability to spend your time and energy in ways that are meaningful to you, without
Right.
being constrained by financial limitations.
He defines wealth as having the resources to live a life that aligns with your values and priorities.
And that might look different for everyone.
Yeah.
For some, it might be about spending more time with family. For others, it might be about pursuing a passion project or traveling the world.
It's about recognizing that the purpose of money is to support the life you want to live,
Right.
not to become an end in itself.
And he makes an interesting distinction between saving and building wealth.
Okay.
Saving is about putting money aside.
Right.
Building wealth is about using that money to create a life that feels rich and fulfilling.
He uses a powerful analogy.
Okay.
Building wealth is like planting a tree.
Okay.
You nurture it, give it time to grow.
And eventually it provides shade and shelter, enhancing your life in ways that go far beyond the initial effort of planting it.
That's a great way to think about it.
Yeah.
It shifts the focus from simply accumulating money to using it to create something lasting and meaningful.
And it highlights the importance of patience.
Right.
Allowing things to unfold over time.
Yeah.
And understanding that true wealth is about more than just a number on a balance sheet.
And speaking of patience, Housel reminds us that building wealth often requires delayed gratification.
Yeah.
Choosing to invest today for a better tomorrow.
This can be a challenge in our instant gratification culture.
It is.
But it's a key principle for long-term success.
He uses a compelling example of the marshmallow experiment.
Oh, yeah.
Where children who were able to delay gratification by resisting a marshmallow in the present were more likely to achieve positive outcomes later in life.
It's a reminder that our ability to control our impulses and make choices that benefit our future selves is crucial.
Yeah.
Not just financially, but in all aspects of life.
So as we wrap up our deep dive into the psychology of money, what are some key takeaways that listeners can apply to their own lives?
Well, first and foremost, recognize that money is a tool.
Okay.
It's not inherently good or bad.
Right.
But it can be used to create a life that feels rich and meaningful, or it can be misused, leading to stress and dissatisfaction.
It's about understanding the psychology behind our financial decisions.
Yeah.
Being aware of our biases and those often hidden forces that can lead us astray.
And it's about recognizing that there's no single right way to manage money.
Right.
The key is to find an approach that aligns with your individual values, goals, and risk tolerance.
So it's about being intentional and thoughtful with our finances.
Yeah.
Making choices that support the kind of life we want to live.
Exactly. And remember, building wealth isn't just about accumulating money.
Right.
It's about using those resources to create a life that feels rich and fulfilling.
And that richness can come from investing in experiences, nurturing relationships, pursuing passions, and making a positive impact on the world.
It's about recognizing that true wealth is measured not by the size of our bank account, but by the quality of our lives.
Morgan Housel leaves us with this thought.
Okay.
The best way to measure your investing success is not by whether you're beating the market, but by whether you've put yourself in a position to live the life you want to live.
It's a powerful reminder to focus on what truly matters. And to use money as a tool to support those goals.
So keep learning, keep growing, and keep striving to create a life that is both prosperous and fulfilling.
Thanks for joining us for this deep dive. Until next time.